Hi, welcome back to my channel. I just felt like it was that time in the world and whatever today to talk about finding your optimal alignment. And I've done probably a few videos of this, but I just wanted to talk about, because something happened recently where I saw things that are the factors as to bringing yourself into your into what controls you being how you are. So those things consist of your mindset and your belief system, so your internal programming, your experiences. So your internal programming in terms of your belief systems, really, because I'm not really talking about your genetics and stuff. Your experiences and your what's the other one, the way you do things. And I think it's just it's one of those things, it's from my experience and from what I've observed and stuff, it's like being in inner child wounding is the biggest part of why people end up in these positions where you are not happy with where you are, and you do toxic things, and you think, oh, I would rather not be being in this position. I feel badly about myself. I decrease my own value to appease other people. But you've got to always, this is what I bring myself back to, you always have to have compassion for yourself on a level of your inner child really doing its very best, because there is we all are born with an inner child. We are all born with an inner adolescent, and when your inner child is programmed to know that your only way out of a toxic situation, the only way to receive love from a disordered person, is to comply to God only knows what type of standards, or God only knows what type of experiences, this is what you're going to be programmed with, because our bodies are wired for survival and our minds are wired for survival, rather than optimal joy and health and this, that and the other. But I feel like I'm really in this place where I think naturally, because I think there's this level of if you come from a really traumatized background, you can be really in that mode, and then you come out of a lot of your trauma and you can feel very consistently able to meet your own needs. And I've definitely crossed that line. But I think when it comes down to the variations of life, I think when I say this, I think it's when you have I'm really good at for example, I became really good at meeting my own needs in isolation. But then I think when it comes to changes in your environment and changes in your experience and changes, you have to be adaptable to life. Whether it's someone switching up on you, your circumstances changing, you have to be adaptable. Your beliefs, your own personal belief system's changing. Getting an illness, this, that and the other, a family member, if you're getting an illness that you care about, a friend or a close person within that you choose to bring in within your circle. I'm not one of those people that deems blood is thicker than water. I do think that you can cut relationships off from the family. Personally, I'm not consider them family anymore, just as a little anecdote. But I think it's important to think, the more energy you take back for yourself, the more energy you can put into yourself. And I said I'm on this 80% grind, trying to bring 80% of my energy and effort and thought processes to myself, regardless of anything else, and really try to bring all of my systems back to where they are supposed to be, and question my limiting beliefs, question where my thought processes are on things, question other people's competency and what my expectations are of those people, what other people's expectations are of me, and if that comes from a disordered place. Because I think it's about being every single time, I just had this thought of when I was trying to make this video of literally when you, it's swapping out someone else's limited belief that they place upon you, or you gain, swapping that for a boundary, or for a boundary that you hold for yourself on your extended self, to try and live out your optimal alignment and your optimal joy. Because if you don't have peace, you can't have joy, realistically. If your body is focused on stress, it's really hard to achieve joy, and this is why a lot of people really target your peace when they are trying to cut off your joy, because they understand that when you bring stress into someone's life, it's harder to bring joy. But I think this is why adaptability is so important, because then when people are trying to fuck around with you so they can try and steal your joy, and you have to look at the reasons and the roots as to why people do that as well. People do that, you know, if people are sociopathic, they are unstable within themselves when it comes to finding stability and to ground that joy, you know, that you would want. So this is how they do it, you know. Hurt people, and it's just about coming to the realization of, like, not everyone is going to be able to meet you on a grounded place if you're a grounded person. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, but it's just so important not to internalize the misperceptions of other people. I've done videos on all of this recently, and detachment, which I also think is a really powerful tool for bringing back your energy. But it's like, you know, meditation I always find is really, really helpful, but I just think also conversation and discussion, which is why I do these type of videos, to be fair, is just really, really helpful, just to like identify the problem areas. Because you can look at like the pie slices of life, you can look at relationships and home, you know, career and your hobbies and everything else that comes with life, really. But they're just like a nice little breakdown of like the portions of life that you might have. Money, because I've tried to actually look into my limiting beliefs around money as of late, actually, and that's been good. But I think yeah, it's just really helpful to look sometimes at the psychological limitations that you place upon yourself, and I think mindfulness as well, when you like notice a thought within your mind and you can like pinpoint it and you can write it down or whatever, and you can put it into your journaling, especially because if it comes up once, it will probably come up again. Because I always look at it from the perspective of your mind and then in the universe, your mind being within the universe, because the universe is feeding you this constant feedback loop of like where you are and what you fear and what you're used to. And yeah, so those are the three things that it feeds you. But then if you're getting repeated thoughts within your own mind as well, that's also another opportunity for you to be like, okay, like, and you can turn it in on yourself. I talk about the journal exercise that I've done quite a lot, where it's like you can take accountability for your own belief systems, in terms of like, it's really easy, especially your inner child, if you are projected upon a lot and you're like, and someone else is saying you have to make the dinner for all the family, even though you're too young to do that. You have to make the family for the dinner, you have to make the food for the family even though you're too young, and this happens to you over a period of time. Your belief system will align with, you have to make dinner for the family even though you're too young. So it's like, you have to, when you have that thought, to claim it and be like, okay, and I have spoken about this before, but it's always good to just go over, because I use this all the time, to claim the thought and be like, okay, do I believe that I have to either do that, or you just really just turn it all in on yourself to consider whether this is something that you actually want to do. And, you know, it all comes down to where you want to put your energy and how you claim your own energy and time and stuff, because I just think, yeah, it's a lot of time wasted and stuff. Obviously it will be specific to the individual, but I think, yeah, when you understand the limitations of people, which I did just do a video on, it is really eye-opening as to how much energy you can put into other people. Because I think also it can be a wounded inner child issue when you have a lot of hope or you have a lot of unmet needs. So therefore your inner child is like, well, if I feed all of my energy right now into a toxic parent, they might then meet my needs. So if I put more and 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 more energy into a toxic parent, then it is possible that they might then meet my needs. But realistically, as most of us know, this is not the reality of the situation, and it's about being like, I'm going to meet those needs myself and understand the limited experience and the limited capabilities of, those around me, in order to, look at things in a more balanced viewpoint. And I think, yeah, it's about, for me, that I'm like in this video, it's about like being able to live in that optimal place, to think, yes, I'm giving the right amount of energy to myself, and I'm giving the right amount of energy to other people, because I don't think it's worth withdrawing your energy from all people point blank, because that often doesn't work. And what tends to happen is it comes out in a backwards way. I think I just saw 11:11. I think it comes out in a backwards way. That validates me. That's an important point. But I think when you give the right amount of energy to people that are aligned to your life, and relationships come in all different dynamics. So I'm not necessarily saying, just because someone has a personality disorder, just never talk to them and, don't ever touch them with a barge pole. It's not necessarily what I'm saying. But I'm just like, if you have a specific expectation for a person, and part of it radical acceptance as to be like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm dealing with, but also like awareness of like what the logistic situation is going to look like, and really feeling and sitting with yourself and being like, is this aligned for me? If it is aligned for you, it's also about being like, putting the right amount of energy and effort into something. And then if you realize you've not put the right amount of energy and effort into something, reclaiming the energy and effort that you should then be pouring back into yourself. And actually, when you pour that energy back into yourself, it can then go into more aligned things. I feel like sometimes when I say these things, I feel like I'm almost, I wouldn't say repeating myself, but I feel like it always is along a similar train. But I just think it's just like really important, to be honest, because there's so many opportunities for people and experiences and life and all of those things to steal your peace and steal your time and energy. But then it's also, I feel like I've been on the other end of the spectrum where I sort of unintentionally isolated myself to the point where I really wasn't giving much time or energy or effort to anything besides myself, which I needed that time, to be fair. And I'm not taking away from that, because I think we all need to go through that sometimes, arguably, especially like on a dark night of the soul element, like when you're really like learning life and you're really coming into touch with yourself, not necessarily learning life, sorry, you go through a whole period of learning life, and then you come into a space of just like, I'm learning myself now, and I'm like grounding myself, and I'm like giving myself everything that I need, learning myself, yeah. So I feel like that was like a really, really healthy time for me, and I don't regret it. But I also think what it's done is it's brought me out of touch as to where the new opportunities are in life, and where you can look to where things are, where you're draining yourself in areas, and being like, okay, well, I'm actually not going to let my boat leak in this area. I would rather save my energy and move towards something that I'm actually more aligned to experiencing. And I have heard this idea as well, actually, on YouTube, to be honest, recently, of people leaking their energy into things. Even like things like oversharing is a leak on a psychological level. And for those of us that have struggled to get our needs met in the past, or have been manipulated, or anything else like that was unhealthy, we are prone to leaking. And we are prone to think, just being like, oh, well, this person's a cunt, but realistically I haven't got any better coping strategies right now than to sit and withstand this toxicity you know. And for me, it's taken me going through real unhealthy situations and real times of like not being able to control my anger on a real hardcore level, to set boundaries with people. But realistically, it's so important to like set boundaries before it all falls over the edge. Do you know what I mean? Before you know, because a lot of the time as well, when you look at it on a balanced level, it's like, you know, you can think, you can be like sparing someone else by limiting yourself, because of like humans' inability to really see the entire picture on a whole level. You know, you talk about people with cognitive deficits, and you talk about people that, you know, might be, I don't know, have misperceptions because of personality related disorders and such like that. But realistically, on a cognitive level, just from person to person, I think you can sometimes believe that you are saving your inner child on a level by not stepping fully into yourself. And what you will find is the world will serve you so much more functionally and with so much more peace and joy when you show up as your healed and full authentic self, rather than a fractured self. I think point blank, in any circumstance, I would argue, because, you know, there's no reason for someone to be that close in your proximity and in your business. There is no reason why anyone else should stop you fully living out your authentic self. I mean, I would just want to preface that with, if someone is a sociopath and they're causing ruckus left, right and centre, and they're doing things to upset other people, you're going to get backlash from that. I'm not saying that that's okay, but I'm saying on a level, we all have free will to do whatever we want. I'm not saying you're not going to get backlash if you're causing issues within other people's lives, but I'm saying on a free will level, we can all do whatever we want. And realistically, then for the individual, it's often an overcompensation, I think, for people. When you've got people doing those type of sociopathic things, it's then people that aren't necessarily causing any problems to then over internalize, okay, I can't X, Y or Z, because, you know, you're maximizing a potential trauma outcome. If I, you know, don't live in my truest alignment, then I will not get love in this area because my narcissistic parent did not bring me that. Do you know what I mean? When I was gonna serve myself. And it's a very healthy, understandable thing, but I think you have to, as a healed adult, move in life through the motions and still show up for yourself and remind yourself. It's a daily struggle, and I think this is why I wouldn't say it's a daily struggle, it's a daily hygiene, if you will, I think. And it does get easier. I think when I was really traumatized and really in a bad mental state, and I didn't have very many coping skills, and I didn't really know in the main where I should be aiming for in terms of my expectations for myself, and, you know, really accepting, you know, not enough, if you will. I mean, say not enough because we're all in a process, but, you know, not accepting like in abundance what I should be receiving. You know, you grow, and I think as you age and you go through time and you learn through contrast, and you just, it's just, you have to grow with yourself. You owe that to yourself, and that comes with the mental hygiene and the mental, you know, because it's not about not receiving enough and someone else not being enough and you not being enough. It's just about being smarter, I think, with your, I mean, I don't know if that's the case for some people, but it's about being smarter with your energy and with your choices, and not allowing the leaks, in the unhealthy leaks, to become a problem within your life. As I say, assessing the situation and understanding the limitations that come with people, and thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm not gonna, this sociopath is never going to validate me right now. They're not going to be happy that I'm in my truest alignment. They're not going to try and support that. They'll probably just turn up and do a fuck ton of shit that's gonna really like try and put me off. But as I say, we all have will of choice, and it's also, I think it's about, as much as you can accept that other people have will of choice, it's about not only accepting that you have will of choice, but really being comfortable. I think it's also about being comfortable in the fact that you can really explore the parameters. I used to talk about parameters of boundaries, but the parameters of your boundaries within yourself, and really to the truest, fullest extent that that would look like in varying situations, and being adaptable in varying situations. Because, you know, when you have one setup that works for you, and you've got like a whole load of things in place that you can, you know, do, or maybe you've isolated yourself, so you haven't got a great deal of input really that's going to negatively affect you, or, you know, you've got good mental processes to avoid triggers of your past, so you're not really super like bothered about your trauma in your past because nothing's coming up to trigger it. It's easy to be in alignment in that place, or it's easy to be living in your optimal alignment and joy, and feel very at peace and in flow, because you're controlling the factors. But sometimes inevitably in life you cannot control the factors. I think it's good to have those times where you do control the factors, but inevitably you can't always control the factors, and it's about the adaptability to where, you know, you're gonna look and think, okay, well, let's look at the factors here, the reasoning as to what's going on here. Am I working with a sociopathic boss? Likely, yes, that's going to stress me out, and I have actually been there, and I look at it now and I think, oh yeah, well, that's probably why I was so stressed over that period of time. That makes sense. And I did used to say, oh, my boss is this, my boss is that, but they do really make your life hell, honest to God. And then it's just looking at like, okay, well, you have to understand your reasonable limitations within yourself as well. Be like, okay, well, you know, what is the likelihood that I'm going to be able to overcome this situation? Do I need to sit here and stay in this job to pay my bills? Or have I got the financial freedom to move on from this situation? You have to, you have to go through that mental process in all of your situations, because sometimes, as we all know, it's easier just to fob people off. Sometimes it's not necessarily easier to go up to someone that's disordered and be like, you're an asshole, there's no reason for you to be sat here doing this, that and the other, you're causing havoc, this, that and the other. It's actually easier to just be like, oh, good morning, how's it going? Great, have a nice day, bye bye. Do you know what I mean? This is just the realities of life. It's just easier to fob people off. And, you know, we all learn this, you know, and it's just the fact that this is why I think learning about different people is imperative, because I think especially when people traumatize you, I think another part of it as well is having distorted ideas of other people, and having hope, your inner child having hope, or your past self having hope, or your current self having hope, or your future self having hope of situations and people becoming something that they are not, and they have no innate ability to become. And that is really, really, really important to find the harsh reality of. We all get to the point where we're able to face those realities. And I think, to be fair, when you're really in touch with grief, I don't know if other people have had grief issues like I have. I've had grief issues just because I've had losses, like family losses at young ages. So I just had an issue with grief. I found it really hard to grieve situations, even like your day-to-day grieving. You know, this situation isn't good. You know, I have to just allow things to be what they are. I really wasn't able to grieve at all. I just really just didn't like the emotion. I wasn't familiar with it. But I think when you're really good at grieving, and when you're really good at like looking, or even argue awakened, when you can look at a situation and think, okay, I see this for what it is. I'm not going to invest excess energy into a situation that is inevitably fatal to my existence right now. I'm not going to put energy into situations that are truly not for me to be concerned with. It allows you to look at where other people invest excess energy, often because I think it's about when people are doing it as well in other ways. So when, like, you're trying so hard to invest yourself, you know, having other people invest in you as a toxic person, and you think that's a lot of effort. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, karma's a bitch, and you know, you have to just rise through the ego of other people and look at things being like, I see it, you might not, but I do. And you know, you can move on, and you can sit there and you can be like, okay, I'm comfortable with where my position is, I don't need to worry, X, Y, and Z, I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? But as I said, I think I do feel aligned to say though that sometimes I think it depends which way round you come at this situation. Say if you admire something about a person, yeah, because I think these type of admiration to me is quite a scary word at this point, because I feel like I've just attracted many strange people over the years, a couple of which have been dangerous, to the point where their admiration has turned into obsession. So I don't really like the word admiration, but the fact is that some people's admiration looks like aggressive jealousy and aggressive attack on anything that you do, because they can't fathom it, they don't like it, they have to attack it, they don't understand it, they purposely misperceive it, to the point where they can conceptualize you within their little personal box of whatever the fuck they need, and that is what it is. Other people, yeah, it's a variety of ways. Some people's admiration is a compliment. That's the type of admiration we like. And this is where when people say, oh, you know, sometimes when you admire things about people, you envy them, you can not, you know, like deal with them because you can feel, because there's a lot of people that do have a complex of like, everyone is jealous of me. But this is where I don't really I do buy into it, but I don't buy into it to the point where like I'm going to be angrily jealous over something that you've done and go out of my way not to incorporate that into my own experience, where I'm quite happy to achieve that within myself anyway. But what I'm saying is, like, when people will purposely try and train you to not experience things in life and experience yourself in a way because it serves them, for you to have a lesser experience. And I think that's just like super, super important to keep in mind when it comes to healing and programming your mind on the day-to-day, because there are a lot of people that will polarize and really get quite type 2 psychopathy about the exposure and the contrast and the polarity they create within another person, in order for you to associate, oh, assertiveness is now associated with dominance, oh, beauty is now associated with arsehole behavior. Do you know what I mean? So then your brain is then wired not to integrate the whole, and is then wired to integrate you know, not integrate that. And then you're at a lesser experience. Maybe your self-esteem suffers, maybe you don't assert yourself in a healthy way and your self-esteem suffers, and therefore the toxic person is getting what they want. And it's all on a level, it's all about perspective and levels as well, because we all work on a different operating system in, you know, comparison to where we fit in the game of life. And you know, we all value different things to one level, but as I say, we'll all see life on a varying perspective. And I just think it's just really important not to sell yourself short, or really, what I've noticed recently, and I've mentioned it in varying videos, is not to put yourself on the same playing field as someone that is truly nowhere near level to you. A lot of people, part of their projection tactic is to make you perceive yourself on the same level as someone. You're not necessarily on the same level as someone if you are truly so much better, because I think it's really, those of us that have been so traumatized, it's quite easy to look at people and think, oh yeah, I see all their good aspects. Maybe their bad aspects too, but you are often trained by toxic people through, you know, and really rightfully so, they are aggressive to children, so children have no other option but their immune systems to be wired. Fully grown adults, they bully and harass and, you know, cause problems to train your immune system and your nervous system to comply with their dysfunction. It happens at any age, and unfortunately some people do target children. It is the reality of it. It's very sad. You know, and this is why most of us that have grown up with childhood trauma survivors understand this complex very well, that people can do this, and they come to that realization at quite a young age. But it's the fact that you have to make that discrepancy between what someone has trained you into believing and where, you know, the true reality is of that situation, and then reclaim your form and reclaim your truth in where you are potentially misaligned and you know, misled within dynamics and not really in congruence with yourself, or maybe not truly accepting yourself in situations, because that is just really where it comes to. And it's as much as I go on and on and on, it is like a stringent process, and I think it does get easier 100% for sure, but I definitely would still say I'm on the journey of, I feel like I've definitely transcended. I would consider myself transcended at this point, but I do think there are things within my childhood, within my physiology, within my DNA, within my emotional body that I still have to move into integrating and processing, to the point where when I am moving through different experiences within life, it's easier to go through that as a whole being and not sort of fall further into your neuroticism because of your trauma, and, you know, God forbid, go through other toxic experiences. But yeah, that is basically all I wanted to say, but I swear I just wanted to add something. Yeah, that is the truth of it. But yeah, what I was just saying was just like, on a day-to-day, it is a mental hygiene thing, and it is a okay, like, and I think once you are in alignment, the fact is there is an end goal to it. This is something I found in my healing journey. There is an end goal to the point where you feel secure in where you are psychologically. I think whether this is a spiritual awakening thing or a trauma healing thing, probably a bit of both, you probably put it under both. But I think, yeah, like, I'm glad that I really had the opportunity to document my sort of spiritual awakening type thing on all of my videos, because it, you know, it's not always maybe looking at like 4 years ago, seeing the way I talked and this, that and the other, it might not be super like obvious to the change, but for me, I've just grown so much in internal peace and internal grounding within myself, and self-assurance, and slowly but surely it is, I don't want to like sound demotivating to say, oh, it's a slow process, but it's a gradual process. It's a comfortable, steady process. It's different for different people. For me, it's been quite a steady, gradual process of healing and of looking at my belief systems and this, that and the other. But you do get to a place where you are completely integrated and you feel healed from your traumas. You've wrestled with your belief systems, you've documented it, you found the polarities in that and really understood what it is that you are misaligned with. People will, and then you become more resilient to life when you get these universal experiences, shall we say, and these experiences come into your life to be like, oh, I'm a sociopath, are you gonna let me sit there and ruin your life? No. Do you know what I mean? Off it goes. Okay, I've got, you know, my toxic mother comes in again and tries to lure me back into her toxic ways. I'm going to deal with it. Whatever. Do you know what I mean? You have, and then it's continuous affirmation, almost, it feels like, when those experiences come back in and you are able to overcome them. It really is just a reassurance in all of those ways to keep you grounded and to keep you secure in where you are, and it helps you stay stable. And there is no fucking way in God's green earth that once you've healed from a situation, you're going to go back to how you were before in an unhealed sense. Not to say that more difficult situations can't manifest into your life, but it's very highly unlikely that when you've learned how to transcend something and you've learned what your healed self is, or much closer to healed self is in your environment, you're going to then just like fall back into, you know, treating yourself in a way where your inner child has been beaten down for years and years, or you've had real traumatic experiences. That's just not the way it works, and that's the reassurance that you also get, because it's just such a validating process, and it's such a healing process, and it's such a, you really just get so much from it, and it's a constant reward cycle, and it is worth the mental hygiene, and it is worth the ongoing work that it takes to bring yourself back to center, and keep doing the journaling, and keep doing the meditation, and keep doing the mental hygiene, and keep doing all that stuff, because it is a daily cycle, it is a daily process for a lot of people. And I think, yeah, it's not always hard. I don't want to make it sound like a slog, and it probably does come across that way, because it hasn't really come across like a slog to me. But yeah, we all have a different journey, and I think it is important just to keep yourself grounded and conscious of what your belief systems are, and then transcend it. Feel like, okay, I'm solid within my place right now. I know to most degrees who I am as an adult, and then I can start, you know, manifesting greater, and I can manifest different experiences into my life, potentially different people, you know, different places, this, that, and the other, to live in an affirmed space that is healthy and aligned and comfortable and all that stuff. But yeah, thank you for listening. That was quite a long video. It wasn't supposed to be.